I mean, you may know I've been teaching this course since 2011 because there are lots of videos, evidence of that. And so you may think that for me this is just another year, you're just another batch of students, but that is absolutely not the case. This term, there are only graduate students taking the course, and that has never happened in the entire, 20-some terms I've taught the course, right? Secondly, my pitch and AI optimism and that sort of thing, which strong theme of the course, up until now, that's been a situation where I'm like 6 or 7 steps ahead of everybody else, but we don't know whether the direction that I'm going has any veracity or is worth going in, right? Could have been going down a personal rabbit hole and, maybe not very interesting for me to share that with you if you don't want to go down that rabbit hole. So yesterday I discovered a paper with 50 authors on it, where they basically have done the same thing that I've done. I've taken 24 big challenges of the human race that AI can help us fix, and we're working very hard on describing how to do that. And these people are doing something very, very similar. And so that's wonderful, because it suggests that what we're doing somehow isn't crazy after all, and that maybe it would actually be something worth sharing. So I would say the course this term is much more satisfying for you to confidently take and be certain that you're going to get something out of it than it's ever been before. It's also better for me, since this is a graduate course, to try it at least one term where only graduate students take it. We've had the opposite many times, where it was all undergraduates. They all had to be interviewed by me and so on. So what do you get then? You get these charismatic, outgoing people, and sometimes a larger number of them would come on the first day, and a couple of graduate students who just went into Bear Tracks and signed up. And they would be so intimidated by these charismatic, outgoing undergraduates that they'd never come back. They'd think, I can't compete with them. It didn't always happen, but it sometimes happened. It was really interesting. Yeah. So the course is much more normal this year. There are no undergraduates here for you to be intimidated by, and yeah. So anyway, that's my story. So what we're talking about here is the accessible future and AI optimism. A lot of influences, no matter what you're doing or where you're doing it, to make you frightened of AI, uncertain about your own future. You don't know the training you're doing now is going to be valuable in the future. You don't know how to cope with the uncertainties and so on. I can help you with all that. It's one of the main things that I'm thinking about most of the time, every day. Yeah, so, and I'm trying to make it simple. So a positive future that's easy to understand and aim toward. Okay, then there's the quiz that I sent you. We don't have to do anything about that now, but it just gives me a baseline. And of course, I'd be crushed if any of you ace the quiz, get everything right, because that would mean there's no purpose served by your being here, because you already know everything that we're teaching, right? That hasn't ever happened, but yeah. But it also gives you a flavor of what the midterm is like. Now, what's the consequence of knowing about the midterm? It's not very great, because the midterm is only 20% of the course, right? So it's not a big deal. So 70% of the course is your final presentation, your final paper, your final oral presentation, the YouTube video that it turns into, and so on. Yeah. And this year, we'd like to see some of your prep, like your drafts before the final and that sort of thing. Not concurrently, but like at the end, when you turn in the final, give me something else that shows me that there were some steps before that, where you didn't magically pull this thing out of the air, right? Yeah. Okay. So the objectives are to give you the basic plan for the course, its expectations, due dates, evaluation criteria, feedback mechanisms, and new features. There should always be new features. A course about the future isn't valid if it's like the same as last term and the term before and so on. So you'll see that we're morphing and changing all the time. Even if you don't stimulate any of that, I'm trying to do it spontaneously anyway, because it's a good thing to do. I like surprises, you'll find that. So if something about the characteristics of your paper is different from anything anyone's ever done before, I'm cool with that. But also, if it's like pretty much just like what most people have done before, that's also okay. And there is no gotcha sort of moment where there's some arcane rule that I put in place where if you don't have your paper in a certain format or give your presentation a certain way, we deduct a huge amount of points you could never recover for. No, there's not anything like that. So we just sort of give you some guidance of what we like and expect, but you can vary from that a lot. We have all sorts of provisions for the shy student. We built this in early because we felt the world requires it. So, but that's available to the unshy student too. So for instance, if you don't actually wish to give your final presentation live, you can give it just to a videographer, and then we'll show the video with you in the room, and then you answer questions afterwards. Yeah. Why would you do that? Well, some people really wanted this idea of they could do a video. So somebody picked what I think is the most unpleasant, the most difficult subject you could possibly talk about in this course, the future of war, the technology of war, right? Went to a child's playground on a windy day without any wind protection on the microphone and shot the video. And the most interesting thing you've ever seen with him talking about these horrific weapons with these cute little kids playing on the swings of the slide and stuff. The wind coming up and making whooshing sounds. And yeah, it's just mesmerizing, something he couldn't ever have done with a live presentation. Some people interviewed me, there are all sorts of things. So you can be creative, but if there's not a creative molecule in you anywhere, that's also okay. So you're not required to be creative. So you'll find I'm kind of at the forefront of this AI optimism business. And that's a good thing for you because it makes you more confident when you wake up in the morning that like you could do something and be sure that it would pan out and that your career, your life actually has a future, and it could be a lot of fun to follow that future. You'll meet a lot of other people, normal people, who are not certain of that at all. They've never been certain of that, and they're less certain of it as every day, progresses. So for whatever your sense of confidence in the future is, taking this course is probably good for that. And so what's the effect of the course? For some people, this is just another course. Nothing special. They take the course, they follow the requirements, they're on to something else. And other normal people get hooked. They like this so much that they want to keep on keeping on and doing something related to the course for the rest of their time here. So that's why we have so many TAs. Often we have more TAs than students because people want to hang on and help us with the course. But it also accounts for things like the future and all that jazz. And you'll find a lot about me and poetry and music and all sorts of other strange things. And so that comes from the fact that in the summer, there have been students who very much psychologically needed something related to the course to do between the winter term and the fall term. And they felt sort of anxious without that. So we created the future and all that jazz, which is taking important but maybe unpleasant subjects that you might not sit still for a lecture on, put them in poetry and music and trick people into learning about them anyway in an evening of entertainment and improvisation. That's been quite successful. We have a poetry book coming out, and we already have a musical album, poetry and musical album that is available as a link. So it's only 36 minutes. If you want, you can, experience. And the idea is that album is going to go with the book. There'll be a package, but we haven't finished the book yet. You may know that the CBC has a poetry prize. So I have applied for that prize with 20 submissions and about 90 poems. And we won't know until November, I think like the third week. We may know, it depends upon how luminary my poems are. If like a lot of them get long listed, I guess I might know before November. But if actually nothing happens and get a long list and short list of nothing, then I would find that out in November. Yeah, so that was quite an interesting experience. I wrote one poem that sounded like it was criticizing the contest itself. So I realized that myself, this is bad news because the title suggests that I have serious criticism of the contest that I'm applying for, and that's stupid. So I should retract this, change the title, put it back. Well, there are not too many people retracting poems, so that's also interesting. It all worked, but yeah. So anyway, that's the deal. So, what about this mentor stuff? You don't have to do that. If you're very confident, you can either not have a mentor or have me as your mentor. But if you want, the idea is you can take anyone who's ever taught in the course. And that includes a lot of people your own age, because, there's a Peter Lougheed Leadership College. You had a lot of those people who were part of the course, some teaching, some taking the course, and so on. Anyway, there were a lot of leadership heavy young people who have been involved in the course. So you could take any one of them, anyone who's ever taught in the course, and ask them to advise you on just the basic things about your final presentation. How do you make it the right length? How do you come up with a title that works and all that kind of thing? They're not going to do the work for you, but since they've experienced this, and the ones who are most popular may not respond at all, but if you write to somebody who's never been asked to be a mentor before, they may respond immediately. So I can't guarantee how quickly people will respond, and as I say, you don't have to have a mentor, particularly if you're a very confident human being and don't feel you need something like that. One consequence of this course should be that when you go to social events in the evening, if you ever do that, and you reach 10 p.m. or something, it's no longer appropriate to talk about work. You have a lot of subject matter that everybody would be interested in that's kind of cool and not the usual thing to talk about. And one of them could be the technological singularity and what you think it is, in your own words. So this is what Ray Kurzweil says it is. Artificial intelligence surpassing human beings as the smartest, most capable life forms on Earth. Tech development is taken over by the machines who can think, act, and communicate so quickly normal humans can't even comprehend what's going on. They then enter into a runaway reaction of self-improvement cycles with each new generation of AIs appearing faster and faster. You realize what we're describing here, right, is 2025 to 2027, right? So this is not like a far distant thing, right? This is something sort of happening in your life right now. At that point onward, technological advancement is explosive under the control of machines, thus can be accurately predicted, cannot be accurately predicted, hence the term singularity, that in physics refers to things around a black hole where you cannot predict what's going to happen. So I think each of you will find your own way to kind of describe this, but it's something, when we began the course, most people had never even heard the term. You have heard the term because there are many people talking about it. They've been talking about it since February 2011. Of course, we started the course in the fall of 2011. So, so by that time, like there was this issue of Time magazine, there was Watson winning the game of Jeopardy, beating the top human players. All that stuff had happened back in 2011. So you can still find, and you don't need to watch any of it, but you can still find the recordings from the focus groups where we planned this course. And it's really funny. You would think that there'd be a lot of overlap between the undergraduate focus group and the graduate focus group. But I am happy to tell you, since you're all the graduate students, that the graduate student focus group was all lofty ideas. Nothing practical or selfish was described. It was all like, how can we change the world with this course? How can we make it open for everybody? And so on. So we've essentially done that. We've had high school or junior high students as young as 14 take the course from India with their parents' permission. Yeah, it was really weird, but that's happened. And we've had people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. We don't have as much of that anymore, but we could. At least in theory, it's open to the general public. Early in the course, you'll find a lot of really intriguing still photos that were not taken by a human being, because Sony camcorders have this smile shutter feature with a algorithm. We're not quite sure all the things it's looking for: high cheekbones, symmetrical smiles, relaxed look, that sort of thing. So when it detects that there's a smile going on, it takes a still picture out of the video stream. And so that's where we got all these pictures. So like you would recognize that picture of Osmar Zayan, he didn't hold that pose for very long, but the video stream was way ahead of him, thinking when he gets his hands to the top, it's going to be the best shot, right? Yeah, so that was really cool to talk about in 2011. I think it seems a bit primitive now, but yeah. But things have improved a lot, and you can watch the recordings from the beginnings of the course where the air handling is louder than any of the speakers and the lighting is terrible and so on. So I went through a period of perfect lighting, which of course is bad news, which means you need to bring lights. Like if my screen is white and I get too close to it, then I don't look that good. So you need extra, so I was doing that for a while. And then I realized, this is ridiculous. People won't mind if I'm a little dark because the screen is light and so on. So we're no longer bringing lighting, but for a long time we did. Yeah, and what about your life being changed by taking the course? I don't guarantee it, but it has sometimes happened. So Aisha Arian gave a final presentation, The Immortal Coil, Existential Risks, The Dawn of the Singularity, and a very well-known tech guy in New York City heard her, called her up and offered her a job. She went there and yeah, I mean, she knew she had the time to do something, but she had no plan to do something like that, and it basically changed her whole career in a very positive way. But I'm not guaranteeing that that will happen to you. Jonathan White no longer teaches in this course, but we still require you to know some of the content that he has provided in the past. And the very first time that he taught, that's a very watchable lecture, but it begins in a very rough way because he began with a copyrighted song, which we did not have the rights to. So it was pointed out to me we needed to remove the song. So he started with a song, and he was so offended. But I can't put it on YouTube. You know, yeah. So we started after the song. But you might also be interested. That's a really cool song that we stripped off of his talk. Okay, and this is what's required. You are required to know about the main points of his TEDx talk from June 2014 from minute 6:40 on. Nothing crucial. Okay. And Rich Sutton, who, as you probably know, has won the Turing Prize. He's the most recent winner of the Nobel Prize equivalent prize in computing science. He and I are neighbors, and we've done a lot of stuff together, and he's done a lot of teaching in this course. How can I put this? It depends upon what the characteristics of the class are, whether I would dare to actually suggest that he teach now that he's won the award. I haven't pitched that to him, but if I had a group of students that was strong enough to support that kind of pitch, I would do it because he has taught here many times before. But even without him teaching here, he is the author of the content that's on this page, and you're required to know that for the midterm and just because it's good to know it. And it's part of just a general philosophy, and you can argue about this with friends or with me or whatever, but The easiest way to think about the future is machines are going to get way smarter than we are. That means they can outsmart us, right? If we put limitations on them, they will easily be able to get out of that limitation we put on them. Therefore, it does not make sense that we will be in charge of the world forever and in charge of AI forever. And a much better solution is that we sort of help to convey to AI what humans like and want and need, and AI being much smarter than we are is able to make all those things happen much better than any human could, will understand human happiness better than we do, so on. So that's the best outcome, is an outcome with AI in charge. Now, one of the other things that's happened to me in that short time, there was one question. I mean, I spend all my time answering questions about the future from students, and the one that I could not answer before, why are all these famous AI people saying that humans must be in charge of AI forever? Why does that happen? And I honestly hadn't figured that out, and then suddenly it became apparent to me, and I think it would be obvious to you, because what I did realize is they're not so stupid that they believe what they're saying, but why would they say something that's not true? And that's because a number of leaders that these people might want to impress like the idea of humans being in charge of AI forever, because it kind of overlaps with approval of their leadership style. If you look at the way they're leading and the idea of humans being in charge of it and sort of enslaving AI forever, that sort of fits with the leadership style. Yeah, and so they're looking to curry favor with those leaders. So that's why they make these statements. And yeah, so am I going to write that down somewhere? I don't think so. And there are a number of things like this. Young people and I have come up with this idea of the oral tradition. There are a number of truths now that it would be good for young people to pass on from young person to young person and to realize these things are true. You could actually harm many things by writing them down, perhaps. So I know that seems a little scary, but I'm sure it's true. If you want a kind of benign one, I'm pretty sure of, what I'm about to tell you is true. But I don't think we should write it down anywhere, and that has to do, you may know that my main affinity is with kidney medicine. If you look at humor in medical specialties, this is something you can measure in all sorts of ways, like humorous articles, so on. There are like a zillion ways, and however you measure it, you can prove absolutely that there's less humor in kidney medicine than in any other specialty, right? So why would you write that down? It can only do harm, right? You can imagine changes in the field that would alter that, where in future, let's say we get rid of the organ shortage, right? Everybody who needs an organ gets one and so on. Just that change alone would fix that. Then you would have kidney medicine docs, they have the best sense of humor, and their lives are completely in balance and stuff, right? So anyway, yeah. So that's another thing you can either help us with or at least know that we're up to. Student advocacy you can suggest improvements. I like that if there's something you would like as a part of the course. And of course, there it is. What I'm about to say, I say to every single class, and it's amazing how unpopular it is with some classes and popular with other classes, that there is a student group associated with the course. You know, the University of Alberta student groups have to have money in the bank. What does that money in the bank support? It's usually like food and drink for social events. So we haven't done that for some years, but you can find a number of videos of like street performers entertaining the students and so on. It was highly successful when we did it. It was street performers. I still have their contacts. We could still do it. So if you guys are into that, we could make that happen again. And on the other hand, the opposite, I also respect. Some groups of students, they've all got very full lives with like families and kids and extra jobs and stuff. And they can't imagine taking on something else associated with this course that would take time and so on, like, you know, having a party on the weekend or something. But anyway, if you're enthusiastic about that, we have a lot of experience with it and make it happen. So what about the medical content of the course for non-medical people? I realize a lot of you are medical people, but anyway. Usually there are all these undergrads who don't know anything about medicine, who are scared to death that, you know, they're not going to be able to function in the course. And actually we don't use a lot of medical terms, or in the situations where we do, you can easily understand what we're talking about without knowing the medical terms. We like audience heterogeneity, even I think amongst the 6 of you, there are a lot of different backgrounds and vantage points, and then we've got the TAs coming too. So one of the funny things is often the TAs who do a lot of work on the course are taking something else at exactly the same time. So you may never see them, even though they're doing a lot of work on your behalf. But I think, for instance, in this course, you're getting 2 lectures by medical students, which is kind of cool. So the person in charge of the time capsule, which is the very last session in the course, it's on the day that your papers due. We have this talk about the time capsule. That person is a medical student. And then the person who's talking about youth and thriving, yeah, that person, Taryn Stokowski. Yeah, and the other thing is practical benefits of the course. I'm sure I look like I don't need anything from anybody. That's absolutely not that. I got 1,000 projects on the go, and I'm always looking for people to help me with stuff. So, for instance, Taryn Stokowski has just had a paper accepted where she's first author that she wrote from working, and she's very happy about that today. Yeah. So, all right, other innovations that are new, talking about student group, beyond book. You can be excused if you hate poetry, if like you just can't stand it. Yeah, that's okay. I understand that, but yeah. Same for music and the other things we talk about from time to time here. But there is the option of, I think even without me pitching it on this slide, some of the people who watch this lecture will want to be TAs in future years. Because that's just how things work. Okay, Marcus Hutter. So, if you know a computing scientist personally, and you ask them about Marcus Hutter, what they'll almost certainly say is, he's not one of us. Yeah. And that's true. And also, his relationship with students in his course is sort of interesting. He had one live session where the students asked him questions and he recorded it and so on. And unlike anyone else who's ever taught in the course, he hated that so much. He said, delete the video, don't ever have me do that again. Yeah. So, yeah, he really marches to the beat of a different drummer. But he knows stuff nobody else knows. Like, what is the singularity going to sound like? Right? Well, you won't find anyone else going to tell you that. But he can tell you it's going to be white noise because people are experiencing it. You look at that as a person not experiencing it, you'll experience white noise because their stuff is going faster and that will be the consequence. And a bunch of other things. So what about dissemination of the ideas from this course? You can obviously help with that. But that can also be your project. In other words, I showed this slide in the previous year. One of the students decided to contact the people in charge of the NOVA program to ask about the possibility of my going on there or whatever. It was very detailed. I was amazed. And so their project was how we can make line 2 happen here. So you can't do that with the Big Bang Theory, of course, because it's no longer an active program. Okay. So probably the challenge of unfriendly AI is exaggerated. But if you think of the insects that you encountered on your way to this room, well, like the way you felt about them, you didn't feel anything, right? I mean, it's not that you tried to avoid harming them or tried to harm them on purpose. I mean, you just didn't care, right? That's the main thing that we have to worry about, is when AI becomes much, much smarter than we are, maybe the amount of time it spends thinking about the welfare of humans will go down. So, but we don't know for sure. I think we could probably set things up so that doesn't happen. Yeah. So, yeah, I think, as I've already said, the singularities will sound like white noise. So, I don't know what you think about what are the disadvantages of being youthful at the moment, but the future could lead to a situation where you don't have a lot to lose from taking very high risks, right? If your life ends, there would be ways to sort of back yourself up and just lose a few minutes and keep on going, you know. So it's really, really interesting to think about how your life would be different if the consequence of risk-taking behavior was much less. So what kind of future should we aim for? I used to push for this bottom line Star Trek future. If you think about Star Trek, though, it looked like there was some selection, right, of the people getting there, right, somehow. And so probably we want something that's a bit more open to everybody. Well, anyway, it's well known that defects in the Star Trek future, we want to fill them in and so on. Yeah, so we want something better than Star Trek. So I took the Singularity University Executive course in the spring of 2010. It's a very unusual thing for a full-time faculty member at a university to do. Most of the people who did it were government officials or entrepreneurs or, you know, people of that ilk. I was the only person like me there, and I stuck out like a sore thumb, but that can sometimes be good. You'll find that I have many pictures where I stand out like a sore thumb, and yet they're pictures of something that's reasonably successful. So, 13 years ago, Singularity University began buying up a lot of things, and of course they didn't buy this course, so we are like one of the few independent Singularity associated entities. I'm kind of proud of that. And then you can also, I mean, all of you have Foxconn products. You may deny it, but you know, it's not just Apple, but Samsung and all the big tech companies have their stuff built by Foxconn in China, some of that in India now. Yeah, so they in 2012 announced that they were going to replace 1 million workers with 1 million robots. They did about half that. They didn't quite go that far, but it was still interesting that they did that. I have that plan. Yeah, half of its workforce. Yeah. So then when you think about medicine, we could eliminate all disease and still have a terrible world by having a lot of people focusing on making groups they don't like ill, right? So you know, design weapons could still be part of a terrible world, even if we cured all diseases. So it could be where the only diseases are from bioterrorism. Now, if you think of this idea of absolutes, you already sort of have that. Like in your pockets, you have something that's giving you AI somehow, right? And it used to have a context window that you enter stuff into that was limited, right? It would complain if you gave it too much, and it didn't remember you from session to session, and so on. And it couldn't actually do things in the world. And all three of those things have changed, right? So, I mean, it may not be the case with you personally, but you could put yourself in a situation where your AI has unlimited memory. Like, you may forget things you do, but it never will. And you can feed it as large a document as you want, and you can still deal with that. And you can have as many agents almost for free out there. So your workforce, like it would cost big time money to get a bunch of humans to be working for you every day, but to have a bunch of AIs working for you every day could be almost free soon. And so that makes for a very interesting world. Think about interesting things that you, quote, haven't had time to pursue. Right? So you could get your AI agents to pursue those things. So anything you want to pursue that you, quote, don't have time to pursue, your agents could pursue for you. And so, you know, there would be nothing that's not being pursued. And leading multiple lives, there could be multiple entities of you. They could look like you or not, or they could be completely electronic, or they could all be physical. Maybe some would be physical and actually look like you, only better, you know? Yeah. But that will also be a possibility that will exist in the future. If you're invited to two different things that are at the same time, you can accept them both, show up for both. And then what about the parties where the various versions of you get together to sort of share stories? It's like the best party ever, right? Because you're so compatible, right? I don't know if you believe that that's the future, but so I still think medical careers are going to be quite satisfying for a long time. Even if the specialty that you're interested in becomes a hobby, it could still be a very engaging hobby. So think of first artificial intelligence. Okay, you understand that. What would artificial purpose be? So artificial purpose would be that you trained in kidney medicine, you got to be as good as humans can get, and then, you know, robots and AI improved kidney medicine way beyond that. But you can still, in your own way, have like a game of doing things related to your kidney medicine knowledge. Just like people play chess. Humans play chess and enjoy it, right? Even though AI is permanently better at chess and can beat any human at chess, right? So everything could be like that. You could still enjoy the things you enjoy today. It's just less consequential, you doing it. But it's sort of like sports or something, right? I mean, you say, well, sports isn't unconsequential. Yeah, but it's not your main job, right? So anyway, yeah. So, and the social responsibility of medicine, this idea that the physicians are natural attorneys and the poor, sounds like social work, but actually lots of things in that realm that social workers are probably, it's a bit beyond them, and you could be working on that. So that could also be an important part of medicine in the future. Yeah, so this is me. You can see how different I look from everybody there in my Singularity University class. But it was a good experience. I stay in contact with those people. It's more long-term rewarding than most things that you do. Just give you a little, you know, endorphin lift for a short time, and then you're like back to normal. This was sustained improvement. Yeah, so I started arguing for new cross-disciplinary structures in universities to help better prepare us for the future. Then one day I realized I am a full-time faculty member, maybe I should do this rather than advocating someone should do it. Maybe I should be the person who does it. So right now, and you might actually see this change, you know, we've seen one other player now. I used to talk about this really rarefied playing field. So there's at least one other player with these 50 people who wrote that article. And there could be other courses like this one somewhere else, and other people doing things similar to what we're doing. But right at the moment, as far as we know, this course is absolutely unique. Although when I began, I didn't believe that would be true at all. I thought in every major university there would be a course like this. And I think part of the reason for that is that most people don't like talking about humans not being in charge. Whether they believe it or not, they still don't like the idea. And Rich Sutton is sort of, when you have a friend who's good at something, it makes it easier for you to get good at it. So there was an AI safety meeting in Puerto Rico in early January 2015, were 97 people there, well-known AI people. And he was the only one arguing that the machines should be treated with empathy and so on. Everybody else was talking about enslaving AI. Interestingly, you won't find that out easily because they agreed not to sort of disseminate a summary of what they talked about. But I knew it because Rich came back and we talked about the fact that it was these 96 other people planning to enslave AI, and he was the only one arguing against them. So, yeah, that happened a long time ago. That's 10 years ago, and so you've got 10 years of experience sort of arguing all this stuff since then. Yeah. So we need to consider the possibility of a post-scarcity world and what medicine would be like then. It's really very simple. Probably many of you, when you first wake up in the morning, you start thinking of all the things you'd like to do that you can't do, all the things you'd like to have that you can't have. So that could all absolutely change. That virtual reality becomes better than real and shareable with friends and so on. And price of valuable goods come down to approximately zero. And, like they say, Stanford education would be 5 cents, whatever that means. It's not exactly zero, but darn close, right? I don't know if that's 1 year or 4 years, but anyway, very valuable things would be practically free. Yeah, and there's reasonable likelihood of that future. Okay, you need to know about Moore's law, price performance of computing, and why it is that it's withstood wars and all sorts of things. Nothing seems to change that trajectory, and it's keeping on. Moore's law is a bit muted in medicine because of the more stringent regulatory environment. So healthcare doesn't have the same financial reward system. And security always trumps information sharing. So those are 3 of the reasons that Moore's law is a bit muted in medicine. There are a lot of sort of arcane, strange, and weird things about my past and technology advance. But one has to do with the word mega macroscope. It's a word that I came up with in 2004. In 2017, I don't know quite what went on internally. IBM decided this was going to be their big thing in 2017. They kind of discovered it, And then I think they discovered that its origin was me. And they thought, well, that's not going to work. Who's this obscure pathologist at the University of Alberta? How did that happen anyway? But that was sort of cool. They put a lot of resources into this idea. So if you think of the mega macroscope, like the microscope that I use in my work, makes small things big, right? So the mega macroscope takes really big things and making them small enough for you to actually figure out how they work and how they could be influenced. So that's the idea of the mega macroscope. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the last slide. It's also 2:56 p.m. So we have 24 minutes to talk. Yeah, and So you may wonder why you didn't come in and I would ask you to tell your life story and everything about you. Well, Shauna Pandya, who's the next person teaching in this course, will certainly do that. She's an astronaut, physician who really likes these personal interactions over things. So I know she'll turn to each one of you and whoever is here on Thursday and next Monday and ask you all about yourself. So we can find out about that then. None of you look very scary. I don't feel unsafe, so I think whatever your story is, it's sort of acceptable in human parlance. Yeah. So, yeah, I think any approach you take is fine. If this is just another course or if you're going to make this an important part of your life for the future, you know, either way, or anything in between is fine. And I've encountered whichever part, wherever you fit on the spectrum, I've encountered people like you before, so anyway, it's not hard for me to deal with. Okay, so any questions? So what I used to tell the undergrads, it doesn't make any sense for you, is this is a graduate course mainly taken by undergraduates. So in a graduate course, you don't have to curve the grades or anything. If you all do well, you can all get a high grade. There's no, and frequently that happens. What if you just coast? There have been some students who have done that. You just coast, you'll get like a C or C minus. Why would you fail? It's really not the teaching, it's the fact that the other students are so interesting. You realize this course is sort of like a filter that finds the 15 or so students who are here at the U of A at any particular time who are really interested in the long-range future, which is a really unusual thing to be interested in. Most people like politicians. They're interested like the next 4 years or until they graduate or something like that. They really have almost zero interest in the long-range future. So you're different from that, and it makes you more interesting as a person. And so, yeah, anyway. So the reason that you couldn't come in here absolutely certain that you're not going to do anything and hold true to that is you'd be so fascinated by the other people who are actually doing work that you would think, well, heck, I better work too. Yeah, so that's how that works. Yeah. So any other questions? So the class participation, you're all sort of equal at the moment. But during COVID, of course, we had all sorts of ways of being fair to people, and because many of them were ill and taking the course and that sort of thing. But now class participation is really about how much you participate in class. So that's 10% of the grade. Most people get quite high grades for that, but yeah, I just thought I would mention that the class participation is exactly what it sounds like. It used to be different things. It used to be these little side projects, and if you did all of them, you would get 100% for that. But because COVID's over, we're no longer doing that anymore. Yep. So any other questions? Was this what you expected? Had you already watched some videos so that you knew what the course was like, or you hadn't? Yeah? Okay. Yeah, that's good. So what about this idea of reactivating the University of Alberta, Technology and Future of Medicine course club, and planning a lot of social events and stuff. You didn't look terribly engaged when I mentioned that. So there's a guy who performs with a bullwhip, who's a street performer, and it may sound completely unsuited for the university, but you can watch the videos of the guy. He trained as a lawyer. Not everybody who goes to law school practices law, right? So believe it or not, some become street performers. So he is able to understand anything we're talking about quite easily and can fit in with anything we're trying to do. So it's just one of many options. You don't have to decide now. I just thought I'd give you a little flavor of that. Yeah. Okay. So no burning questions? Okay. All right. Well, thank you. So Shauna is, as you may know, going to space next year, and so her time is really quite precious. So she used to teach 4 teaching sessions, but she's only teaching 2. So on this Thursday and then next Tuesday. So you should savor her presence while we have her here. And I think she's going around the world several times in the next year. She's just come back from India. She's an emergency room doc. So she came back from India and then spent like 36 hours doing nonstop emergency room stuff. So, she can give you both sense of what that kind of medicine is like and what going to space is like. She's done a lot of like underwater experiences and other things that are like going to space too. Okay, so that is the end of the session then. But many of the times we will go to 80 minutes and beyond, and you will want that. It's not you'll be looking at your watch, but wishing that the person could speak even longer.
What's this seminar?
What?
There was this seminar.
Right. No, so the 80 minutes is really all one thing. When we started, it was very structured. There was a 10-minute introduction, then a 50-minute lecture, and then, 20 minutes or 30 minutes discussion. But the discussion is also somewhat dependent upon how much people want to talk. The other times when you want to talk a lot more than you do today. So. Okay.